exciting things about this session is that while there are lots of sort of debates and conversations about Indian cinema and about Pakistani cinema, it's seldom that we get the chance to put them together in a comparative framework, to see the convergences and even the departures. So I'm particularly thrilled that we will have that chance today. I'll introduce Rachel and Javed Jabbar. Rachel Dwyer is Professor of Indian Cultures and Cinema at School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. She took her BA in Sanskrit at SOAS, followed by an MPhil in General Linguistics and Comparative Philology at the University of Oxford. Her PhD research was on the Gujarati lyrics of Dayaram. She has published 9 books, several of which are on Indian cinema. She has recently completed Beyond the Boundaries of Bollywood, The Many Forms of Hindi Cinema, co-edited with Jerry Pinto, published by Oxford University Press, Delhi, and is currently writing Bollywood's India, Indian Cinema as a Guide to Modern India for Reaction Books, London. She edits 2 book series on South Asian cinema, one with Oxford University Press and another with Indiana University Press. Javed Jabbar has diverse interests in mass media, international and national affairs, the environment, voluntary, thank you so much, development work, social and cultural issues. He's a commentator and analyst on international and national public policies. He has written and produced in 2008 a new international award-winning cinema feature film titled Ramchand Pakistani, directed by his daughter Mehreen Jabbar, which has won 5 major global awards and 2 national awards and has been screened at 40 international film festivals to date. As part of his voluntary work, he was recently re-elected for a 4-year term as one of the 4 global vice presidents of IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, the world's largest environment organization. So what I suggest is that we have the talks back to back, and then we could open it up for questioning from the audience, if that's okay with both of you. Yeah, great, all right. So I'll hand it over to Rachel Dwyer.
Okay, hello. I'm going to actually stand up to do... Can I take that? That's mine. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm actually going to stand up to do this, not because I'm actually going to perform, but because I want to show you a couple of clips. You're probably quite familiar with them already, but just as a sort of aid memoir. Okay, I can't come near there. I can't get near my laptop. I'm feeling a little traumatized to be away from my beloved laptop. Let's see how we can work this out. Okay, well, what I want to do is just mention 2 main points today, given our sort of fairly limited times we have. And one is to say that Hindi cinema deserves our attention, not just as a form in itself, but as the best and most reliable guide to modern India. I'm not used to rowdy audiences, so please excuse me if I get a bit distracted as people talk and make phone calls. So what I'm not trying to say to you today is that film reflects Indian society at all. That would be ridiculous. But I want to say that it shows us how life should or could be. And the images of the wealthy lifestyles, of the extended family, of beautiful people where everything is gorgeous, traditional, and functions under a religious atmosphere is modern India as it should be. These are its aspirations. And these films, which are saturated with melodramatic features, may look almost comical to outsiders, but they need to be taken seriously as a way of understanding what entertains audiences, what their fantasies are, and why this is the best way we have of understanding what may be the vision of the future that modern India holds. A new global power whose role in the world is changing swiftly. And I think really here, looking at the last 20 years, which is what I'm doing in the book Bollywood's India, is particularly important, because this is the time at which... I'm going to go and sit. I can't do this one. You're quite lucky if you can't see. I think I'm going to be easier with this microphone. Is that better? I have switched it on. Maybe that was the problem. Okay, is that okay now? Can you hear me? Hi, sorry about all that. And we'll work out a way of doing the clips from here. So I think really what I'm saying is I want to look at the last 20 years, because this is the time when India has really changed and gone from being a protected economy to undergone economic liberalisation, and that in turn has triggered the most rapid social change in the nation's history. And now it seems to be gaining an unstoppable momentum in the last 5 years as India emerges as one of the world's largest economies and home to one of its biggest populations. And in this, of course, the cinema has taken its role, and it too has changed very rapidly in the last 20 years, following its first 100 years of history. And largely through these economic changes and the society changes, but of course also through the changes in media itself, where film is no longer really the right word to use, as most of the film is consumed in a range of digital media, making the whole experience somewhat different. And during the last 20 years, we've also seen the emergence of the term Bollywood, a term much disliked within the Hindi film industry, but one which has given it a real international branding and given it a particular kind of image. And I think probably most people are very familiar here in the room with what Bollywood itself is, and the way in which the Hindi film tries to show the world in a particular way, focusing largely through its melodramatic form on the use of emotions within the film, between the characters, and in a way it binds the audience to the film, both in India and overseas. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick clip, which I think I'm going to have to ask somebody to set off for me, with the microphone for sound. They need a microphone for sound, I'm afraid. You know what, I'm going to leave the presentation and just scrap it and come together on it later, because I think otherwise we're not going to get ahead with this. And show you clips where we look at this study of class and youth and their fantasies here. I'll use the clips later, yeah, sure. But alongside Bollywood, I think I'm sorry, I think there's another speech going on in the room. However, alongside Bollywood, there are other forms of Hindi cinema emerging today. And I'm not talking here about the regional cinemas here, but other forms of Hindi cinema, in particular the emergence of what's called the multiplex or the Hatke film. And this is a film which appeared in the mid-2000s in India, a new formation of Hindi film which has a different place in terms of production style, content, location, music, personnel, and distribution, and seems a rich source to look among the new vision of India appearing among the metropolitan elite group of Indians. And there's been little work on this film, although people have started to recognise it being an important new genre. The multiplex films, which are more realistic than Bollywood and show a rejection of melodrama, have a more focused narrative, although they do have the presence of stars in films such as Being Cyrus, even if they're not performing as stars within the films. Whereas the Hatke films have unknown actors or character actors from Bollywood films such as Boman Irani and Paresh Rawal and Anupam Kher, and create their own stars such as Abhay Deol. And these films are shown almost exclusively in multiplexes, though usually on the smaller screens, not at peak times, while the Bollywood films are shown on the largest screens, with several screenings going on simultaneously. Multiplex and Hatke films have shown a great change in production, not made with an eye on the major market, as they have smaller budgets, aimed only at the Indian metros, and they've travelled rarely overseas. As I mentioned, they don't use the major attractions of the Hindi film, but put them in as part of the narrative, and they're very much set in the cityscapes of modern India, particularly that of Delhi, while music is incorporated through the narrative with less use of the playback singing, which many find so disruptive here. Although the music itself is often Bollywood in style, but often picks up on the independent music scene in India far more, and language showing a particular cool style of Delhi Hindi mixed liberally with Punjabi, aimed at the younger audience. Many of these filmmakers have travelled and worked overseas, such as Nagesh Kukunor, whose film Hyderabad Blues is thought to have begun the trend in the late 1990s, though picked up only later. And these directors are always clear about their love of Bollywood, which they often use as pastiche for key moments in the film. These multiplex cinemas are located in centres of new middle-class consumerist culture, and they've changed the audiences by their economic and physical differences. They're very expensive, ticket prices are high, and the screens are available to many other audiences here. And we're now seeing a whole new audience being shaped for these films in particular, because these audiences here are people who watch the Bollywood films, but watch a great deal of international film, in particular other films from Asia, which are available largely over the internet, but also through the incredible DVD rental shops, which you see all over. And the directors have also created a different relationship with their audiences, using workshops, cinema clubs, special screenings, blogs, and social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter. And I think here we're really seeing the transformation of Indian cinema, although it's yet small. I think it's significant, and it might be the grit around which the pearl can begin to form here. And some of the clips I wanted to show you is a filmmaker called Dibakar Banerjee, really, who's made some of, I think, the best of these films, making his 3 films beginning in 2006 with Khosla Ka Ghosla, 2008, Oye Lucky, Lucky Oy, and recently Love, Sex or Dhoka in 2010. And these are films which are very much away from the Bollywood type altogether, and have generated a huge interest across the middle-class audiences. So what is this really talking about today? Well, I think Bollywood itself has changed greatly in the last 20 years. It's really achieved a dominance which didn't seem likely even 20 years ago, when it was seen as being a rather backwards type of form, and something I think people were often actually quite embarrassed about, to being something which is seen as a recognised brand, taking India everywhere. And I think this is largely because these are the years we've seen the rise of India's new middle classes, whose values are becoming so dominant in India, and which is seen in these films, both among the people who make them and the people who watch them. But we're also seeing, even among these new middle classes, the shaping of a new type of educated young cosmopolitan India who watches these Hatke films, which other social groups largely avoid. This group may be a younger generation, or it seems it could even be a reformation of India's older middle classes, who've kept the need for realism in cinema, though given up the hostility to Bollywood, which characterised this class for many years. The less educated but still visible classes, the lower middle classes, watch Bollywood and lower class comedies and television, while almost everyone who watches film watches Bollywood. And I think also it's important to say a number of people have given up on this whole kind of Bollywood aesthetic and turned to making local or regional films, such as famously in the state of Bihar, the Bhojpuri film, which has become hugely successful, though only among audiences in Bihar and in the Bhojpuri-speaking settlements in cities such notably Bombay. I think it's also been interesting to see how these small films have influenced the major Bollywood producers here today. And some of the most successful filmmakers in India, such as Yash Chopra, Ronnie Screwvala, and Anurag Kashyap, have started to help in the production of these films, and particularly we saw Amir Khan taking a role in distributing the film Peeply Live last year, which otherwise would not have found major audiences at all. So in these development of new forms of cinema we've seen against Bollywood, the Bhojpuri and the Hatke cinema, I think perhaps we are beginning to see challenges to the Bollywood behemoth. Both films are significant in the history of media in India for showing the emergence of locally produced media in groups which are increasingly othered by the middle classes, and those of you who've read Arvind Ardiga's novel will be familiar with this, while the multiplex films are showing how the Indian middle classes themselves are changing. We also see changes in how producers and creatives are in motion between different forms of media and shaping tastes in media consumption and self-fashioning. It's also important that media careers now represent some of the most lucrative salaries